And the class today I've called Happy Hips and Hamstrings. So it'll be all very stretchy based, it won't be very hard at all. And we'll need just the strap into its loop for the hamstring stretches. If you don't want to loop it, that's okay, it doesn't matter. But it's sometimes nice if you want to just do the stretch where you put it around your back, you don't want to have to hold onto the two ends. So if you want to re-loop that up or prepare that, you're most welcome to. We will start, as always, with a little bit of pranayama, some breath work, and then this will then progress us into, we'll stay lying after that. So I don't mind if you want to do your pranayama lying, that's fine, because the first poses will be, as I said, what we call supine, up facing. So when you're ready to settle on in, take a moment just to connect in with the breath. It's a very slow breath that we look for in pranayama, and obviously the slower the breath, the more that we can slow down the heartbeat, the more that we can instigate the parasympathetic nervous system. That's our calming nervous system. As we take a moment to bring the breath in and out through the nose. Fill the lungs, send that breath all the way down to the bottom of the lungs. And notice this breath then fills to the top, expanding the chest and the belly. On the exhalation, we're mindful of emptying all of this breath. Noticing that there is no breath sort of lingering or sitting in the lower lobes of the lungs. We work through the breath, also being mindful that the breath isn't rushed in. So there's this slowness and smoothness that comes to the breathing as we inhale. And then that same slow, smooth, steady breath as we exhale. Be mindful of the end of the breath, that there's no force or strain to the breathing. Keeping the softness around the neck, the throat and the facial muscles. We notice that both the inhalation and our exhalation are exactly the same length. As we maintain that same quality of the breath, perhaps just a gentle wriggle of the fingers and the toes invites some movement back in. props, or you might have something underneath the backs of your knees, you're welcome just to gently draw them out because we won't need the props. And if you're sitting like me, you can pop one down onto, lie down onto the mat. Get ready to bring the soles of the feet to be flat onto the floor here. So if you run the legs along and the knees are pointing upwards towards the ceiling, we open the legs a little wider. So I'm just going to say as wide as the mat moves. And if we're going to these gentle little knee floats, I call it knee floats. Sometimes when we're on our belly and we do this, I'll call it windscreen wipers. To me, it's just that kind of action that happens that they all go to one side and the little windscreen wipers, they float off to the other side. This kind of, how does this sort of stretch the hips? It's mostly over that sort of lateral side of the hip and sort of down as it runs then into the thigh. So the knees just float side to side, the hip opens. And, it's also really nice if the lower back feels a little niggly. You think, I just want to loosen out that lower back. This is often a nice way to create a gentle amount of movement. Now when the knees finish their floats over to the left-hand side, leave them there. And if it feels comfortable enough to add some deeper stretch into this, your left foot would come and weight the right leg down, so you just pick it up and draw it down a little bit more. You don't have to if it's already, when you get done, you think, it's already quite strong, then you can definitely leave the knees just as they are. The one thing that you do need to be reminded of though when we go into this, because you can see we're starting to go into a little bit of a twist, is that the shoulders stay onto the floor. So we anchor the upper body quite actively into the mat, but we do allow this right hip to leave, or that partially that right glute leaves the floor. Switch those legs, put the left down, float everything over to your right side. And when you're ready, it'd be the right foot, weighting the left leg down if you want to take it there. And you might do it on one side but not on another, that's okay too. Sometimes some sides are, might be a little more sort of restrictive, not happy for us to add any more intensity to the stretch, or the stretch might be well and truly enough, we don't need any more. Release that right leg, roll the knees back to the centre. Walk the feet in together so that you can bring the soles of your feet together, and we'll go into a lying butterfly. Now, a couple of options that we might have here, if you find that this is too strong into the hip, into the groin, or into the pelvis, is that you could prop up these knees. So if you had some blocks, you might put blocks underneath them, or you could even thread, if you had a bolster, you could thread your bolster through and do a similar kind of action. It just supports the knees. If the pelvis is really vulnerable, and if the sacrum is a little sensitive, and sometimes having these knees out here in space doesn't feel that nice, so I definitely suggest propping it up. Though for some it might not be enough, and my suggestion to that would be perhaps just popping your hands onto the inner legs and just encourage a gentle amount of weight. It's a funny kind of pose because a lot of people tend to want to really go gung-ho with this pose and really sort of really force these legs down, which obviously I wouldn't be an advocate for. So I would just encourage there to be a slight amount of resistance here with the hands. Check in though that your ribs are on the floor. Often the back can go into a slight arch in this, and the reason why it does is that it tips the pelvis forward. When the pelvis tips forward, the knees go further down to the floor. So our brain goes tick, tick, tick. You've done such a great job there. You've got your knees close to the floor, which is what you should look like if you were perfect in this pose. So it's not about perfection. It's about being, authentic in the pose. So therefore, replace all your ribs back onto the floor. Knees might float up a little bit, but it's a very honest version of this pose. Because we are also stretching, you probably feel it, there's this sensation of the stretch going into the inner groin muscle as well. So the hips have been opened out, that's why the legs have gone outwards. But then in doing that, then the inner leg muscle gets stretched. So that we don't overstretch the groin, I usually suggest popping the hands underneath the backs of the legs and assisting the knees to come back in. It means you also don't have to work too hard into those adductors. Draw the knees when you're ready in towards your chest. Just give that lower back a gentle stretch here. Left leg goes long, right leg stays into the belly. Your left hand comes to the outside of this right knee. Your right arm anchors you down onto the floor and you roll the knee across the body. As the knee rolls over to the left, that right shoulder stays onto the floor. This now you might begin to feel or sense it radiating down over your bottom and that lateral side of your hip. I always give the cue here in this one as well that if it's too niggly in your lower back, bring this right foot to rest on the inner leg. It can take sometimes that ouch, you feeling that if you've got a bit of a unstable SIJ, sacroiliac joint, this can really niggle having that leg out there in space. You can turn your hand on this one if you wanted to. Look over your right shoulder, up to you. Or you can prop this leg up. Definitely put it on your bolster or a block. Allow the head to roll back to the centre. Assist the knee back in, roll it back in. Slide that leg long, and we will prepare for the left leg to come in. Left knee in, right hand comes to the outside of the leg, we roll it across. So the hips and the hamstrings, obviously very much related. They come in and the hamstring muscles come up and insert into the hips. You can look over the left shoulder this one if that feels nice on the neck. But they can be big driving factors to back problems. So if the hamstrings can pull on the pelvis, the hips can rotate the pelvis, and then the pelvis, because the back muscles are attached to the pelvis, and the back can often be affected by tight hamstrings and tight hips. And let the head come back to the centre before we release this left leg back in and through. Place the left foot onto the floor, walk the right foot in. You have a couple of options for this next one. You can either use a block if you have one, or you can use a bolster, or anything that you might have that allows your hips to go into elevation. Won't matter. Could be books, it could be a stack of books, it wouldn't matter. We'll go back to the knee to chest. We'll slide the left leg long and then we'll gradually draw the right knee back in. Now this is to stretch over the front of the hip joint, what we call the hip flexors. It's the same stretch that you get when we do, say, crescent of the moon, when we do pigeon and heel to bottom, lounge with heel to bottom. It's to open up through the front channel of the hip. These hip flexor muscles, as the name implies, it's a series of muscles. They are the muscles that flex the hip. They're the muscles that allow you to bend at your hips, to, say, come down and tie up your shoelaces. They get very overworked because we love bending forward. And then when they get overworked, they can also get very, very tight. So this will help to stretch them out, pressing the back of that left thigh down to the floor and easing the right knee. Now ease back on that right leg, so ease out of it. Take it to the floor, slide it down, go onto the side. Left's your incoming leg, right's your long leg. Do the same again, carefully. You can even draw the toes back and press out through the heel as well. If you wanted to, so left thigh gently draws in, back of right thigh presses down. Ease the left foot back down to the floor, prepare to bring the right leg in, lift on up, slide that block out, ease the spine slowly back down in towards the floor, and look good for the strap. Whenever you're ready, that strap's going to loop around the right sole of the foot. Bring it over where the balls of the feet are. If you want to do that little one where we sneak it underneath the back, we can. That is if you want to go hands-free, otherwise you're welcome to just hold on to with your hands. Hamstrings. It's actually done, hamstring stretches can be done in two ways, a straight leg or a bent leg. There is a technique with the bent leg though. We'll do that a little later in the happy baby pose. But as a straight leg hamstring stretch, we want to make sure of a few things. Primarily alignment of this pelvis. So the first thing you'll do for me is think about stretching the right bottom cheek down to the end of your mat, like you're trying to push your right bum cheek away from you. That should square up the two hips. Think about the straightness of the leg. And then maybe even that option of drawing the toes down and sort of pressing or driving out through this heel. Keep the legs straight. Start to move the leg across towards the left a little bit more. Still keep the legs straight though. Keep sending that right bottom cheek down to the end of your mat. And keep that nice steady flow of the breath. I know this one can get a little tough in the backs of these legs. Therefore can be that temptation to want to hold the breath or to at least start to make it shallow and sort of shortened. And then breathing in, ease the leg back in, slip the strap out from underneath the back. Try the same on the other side, left foot steps in, strap comes around the back. Underneath the armpits if you're going to do the hands-free one. Toes down, heel up. That left bottom cheek's the one now that gets sent down to the end of the mat. Stay with the straightness that you've created on this left leg. See if you can move it across the body. If the strap's too tight to get it, any kind of sort of range, we're probably wanting to think maybe could I get it in line with our shoulder, and just loosen, just pull off the strap tension a little. Again, keep sending the left bottom cheek down. Continue to extend out through the left heel. let the leg release back in line with the hip. And we can maneuver this strap out from underneath. Take the strap off the foot. Let's go with the left ankle onto the right knee. This is what we call figure four. It's a very typical opening release here. We lift the right leg up off the floor and we'll come and collect the right shin. If you think, you know what, I've got access to that strap so I can actually continue to use it, you're most welcome to bring it around the right foot if you feel like it gives you a better sort of pull and it doesn't mean that you need to lift your head or your shoulders. Definitely put the strap over the foot. Whilst the right knee draws in towards us or the right leg pulls in towards us, the left knee opens away from us. The other thing that you can do in this is you could assist the left knee. So to stay open, you definitely can hold on to the right leg with your right hand and then allow your left arm to sort of pull out of the loop and bring your left elbow to just gently sort of open up the left hip. Let go of the right leg, and when you're ready, switch it over so that the right ankle sits onto the left thigh now. Do the same, we'll reach through. Use the strap again if you wish on this side. Give it a chance just to settle into the stretch, particularly if it feels there's a little bit of resistance there. And if it softens and you think, you know what, there's an opportunity here for me maybe to explore it further, then let your right elbow rest into the leg. Ease the left foot back down to the floor and let the right leg come down to join it. If you have a set of blocks, we're going to put the blocks down at the end of our mat for a pelvic curl, and the blocks will then become your new floor. So we've given these hamstrings a fairly decent stretch. However, if they cramp whilst we're doing this pelvic curling, scrap the blocks and go back to the floor and do it onto the floor. As we breathe out, we tilt the pelvis back, we press our feet down into the blocks as we continue to lift, and we rise up away from the mat. At the top of the lift, or at that height of lift, we take one full breath in, ready to come down. On the exhale, just easing the spine down nice and slowly. Tailbone coming down to the mat first, so rolling through that lumbar, rocking through the pelvis and resetting in neutral pelvis. And tilting back, pairing away, pressing down to the feet, curling up slowly. So placing the feet onto the blocks obviously gives them height, but also increases the range of movement into the hamstrings. And in fact, I'll show you that the hamstrings, often we don't see the hamstrings as part of this movement. Often we see it more as a spinal articulation, probably because I cue it that way. There's a little bit of abdominal work that goes into it. But next time as you come up and you stay in, let's say you're going to go into bridge, but you're just going to stay elevated for me here. Imagine that you can pull the blocks towards your armpit. So you can even maybe get your toes over, pull them over the edges of the blocks, and imagine that you're trying to slide the blocks towards your armpits. And what you should feel is that then there is this sensation of the hamstrings working. The glutes will contract, and then the hamstrings will work. So it really is a hamstring driven exercise. Hamstrings are lengthened here, and then they're worked as well. When you're ready to come down, ease slowly back down. Allow the knees to do that gentle little float side to side. As the knees float back to the centre, bring the strap one more time over the 2 feet. We'll take a dual hamstring stretch. You could even maybe make this loop, up to you, but you make it a little bit bigger so you're actually holding on to like a nice big sort of circle with your 2 hands. Up to you. Both legs come together. That gentle pull on the strap, you are most welcome here to, as you pull onto the strap, to feel some lift of the lumbar off the floor. And as we would in a single hamstring stretch, we'll draw the toes down and press out through the heels. Allow the legs just to settle back in line with the hips, bend the knees and take your loop off your feet. Knees will go wide in this next one. Hook your elbows over or around, shall I say, the legs here. So it's like a wide-legged knees to chest. It's in this wide-legged pose that then it converts into the happy baby pose, which is where the soles of your feet go parallel to the roof. Your hands come over to either hold the foot or to hold around near your ankles. Doesn't matter what you get to hold on to. Either way, what we're trying to do is encourage the thighs to sit by the sides of the ribs. And then as we pull on the feet pull towards the top edge of your mat. And then you press your heels to the roof. And this is where I said it's like a bent-legged hamstring stretch, where you start to feel this version of a bent-legged hamstring stretch is in the insertion point of the hamstrings up in your sit bones. So you usually either feel a hamstring stretch, or obviously one of 3 places, backs and knees, the belly of the hamstring, or this part here, right up near your bum, where they come onto the, you call them the ischial tuberosities, these little tiny bony parts of the bottom. As we release the hold of the feet very slowly, noticing that the heels go dangling near the bottom, stretcher eases off, and the soles of the feet can go onto the floor. You won't need those blocks, so you can slide them out off the mat. Take the left leg and cross it all the way over your right leg. I'll give us a variation to this because it may not always be achievable to grab both ankles. It's called a lying head of the cow. If you lift your right foot up off the floor, your knees pull into your belly, and your 2 hands go down to find the ankles. Now, sometimes we can get the first one, usually the left one, because the right can often be a challenge. So if that's the case, scrap the hold of the right, put the right on the floor. Yep. Keep the left one in line with your right shoulder and keep lifting the ankles so they're in line with the knees. So if you've got hold of both, it's the same cue. The ankles rise, the feet pull to you. Now you can probably tell again the body's tried to cheat here, and it starts to twist and rotate the pelvis. Okay. See what happens when you send your left bottom cheek down to the end of your mat more. You square up the hips. It should make it significantly more obvious in the left glute than before, than when you've gone with the twist. And we're trying to keep alignment of the pelvis. heels down, and the stretch should ease off. Feet to the floor, uncross, unravel, right over left.
It's stressful.
Try it on the other side. More stressful than the traffic law.
Yeah. No, never.
So again, now the emphasis is always on the top leg. Yeah. So in this case, it's going to be the right leg. Scrap the left if it's not cooperating, because it really isn't too much about, you're not getting a lot of stretch out of the left. Okay, it should be primarily the right. So remember, keep stretching that right bottom cheek down to the end of your mat. Feel the depth of the stretch when you align the pelvis. You will thank me, I promise. Tomorrow. Good. Draw the heels down near the bottom, unravel the legs, kick those knees into your belly. We are making progress to sitting. If you'd like to rock up to do that, you're welcome to. Otherwise, you might just do a quick little roll over to your side. We'll come into a cobbler's pose here. That's just like what we were doing before, that butterfly, soles of the feet together. If you find that this is terribly uncomfortable, elevation can help. So even a little towel underneath the back of the pelvis can help. It doesn't have to be high. It can sit you into the bowl of the pelvis. So the pelvis is like a little fish bowl, and then the spine obviously is part of that structure. And when the spine sits quite nicely into the pelvic rim, the pelvic bowl, then this is where the stretch becomes obvious. You might draw the knees out, like you're trying to clear your mat, and then let them drop down, and let gravity draw them down, so like an out-down action. The idea of that is that we get that femur, that leg blown out of the hip socket, give it some more space, and then those knees can comfortably draw down. Release the hold that you have of the feet and let the right leg go long. Just keep that left leg sneaking into the inner thigh. Take the arms up on the inhale. Lead with the chest as you come forward on the exhale. So this is like a dual stretch here at the hip and the hamstring. The left hip's opened up, but the hamstring stretch on our right leg. You could pull the toes back. You could hold onto the foot. You could hold near the ankle. The hold is really there to draw us down onto the leg more, so that we get closer, we get greater contact with the thigh and more hip flexion, hamstrings. Breathing in as we draw the trunk up nice and slowly. Do a quick switch to the other side. Left long leg, right short leg. Breath in, we lift. Breath out, we go forward. As we take the next breath in, allow the trunk to lift and to stack. Split the legs into a big V. Again, here, if you feel that it's slightly sort of restrictive and you feel like you're kind of like this, then sit on something to prop yourself up. The other thing that you can do is just wriggle the flesh out from underneath you, because you tend to, the flesh tends to roll underneath you. So again, just get your hands and wriggle that flesh out underneath. It feels better when you get it out from underneath. You feel like, oh, I can sit on my bottom now. It's very liberating. It's like, just stay up there. Bring the hands forward. So yes, we're stretching the adductors, the inner legs. We'll get to the hamstrings in a second after this. But as we know, these, as I said before, these adductors, these inner leg muscles come up into this pelvis, and the pelvis, the hips wrap around. Obviously, the muscles wrap around into the hips. So it's nice to release through these. It's an area that we don't tend to stretch very much, the inner leg muscles. But again, they play havoc on the back. Take a walk around towards your right and just jump the right hand over the outside of the right leg and the left hand's on the other side. Draw your chest a little deeper to that thigh, so chest and thigh. And then you might notice how that left sit bone wants to roll or lift off the mat. Can you roll or reattach the left bottom cheek back onto the floor here? Walk the hands on the inhale back to center. Use the breath out to come around to the left leg. Again, creating that little jump, left hand over the left leg, chest to thigh. Breathing in, walk back to center. And continue up to stack the spine. Just help the legs. I like butterfly, I like to help these legs back and I like to stretch and slide the legs along. Some people's music is so loud. Sometimes I think I'm getting old. Inhale, exhale. I love how when people have their music so loud that they have to have their windows open.
Just want to share.
I don't want to hear it. Do not want to hear it. That's what happens when you get to your 50s. You get a little less tolerant.
Till you get to your 60s.
Yep, I think my patients will be very, very thin by then. So this is a dual hamstring stretch. You can probably feel that. This is often the stretch where people will tell me, oh, I feel it underneath the back of my knees in this one. And again, it doesn't really, it's not important where you do feel it. Wherever it is that you're feeling it is obviously a point of tightness. So in something like this, it's probably more likely going to be there behind the backs of the knees or in the bottom. And then as we inhale, release the hands, very slowly the trunk gets to come up to lift. We're going to swing the legs around to the side. It'll bring us onto all fours. We'll find a calf stretch first of all. There also is a little bit of a back of the leg stretch, but primarily calf. As you tuck the toes under, don't worry what leg you choose. The heel just presses away from you. Keep that hip though pointing down, so watch that the hip doesn't try to roll out the hip of this long leg out the back points towards the floor and the heel presses away with you. It's a very straight leg, so hence a little bit of hamstring stretch. Good. And then release that leg and then change legs. Other leg goes long, pressing back away with that. Leave that leg where it is. Find a down dog pose where the right leg comes out, or both legs, left and right, on the back end of your mat. Now this is traditionally a dual hamstring stretch. If it's too strong on the upper body, obviously you could try it as a dolphin pose. You could come down onto the forearms. But feel the heaviness of the heels being drawn down towards the floor, but the backs of the thighs, when you lift your backs of your thighs up to the roof. I always think that there's like two hooks sort of at the backs of those legs, and they're being lifted up towards the ceiling. And you start to feel that hamstring stretch. Heels heavy. Yep. Backs of thighs high. Take the right leg to lead back behind. Bring the right knee then, when you're ready, into the chest and step forward to the front part of your mat. Help it through if it won't come in that first stage. It doesn't need to be underneath the knee. If it feels a softer option, you can definitely put your left knee onto the floor. But this one we call lounge lizard. This right foot starts to do, like I call it a waddle, off your mat. It's very much off your mat, and the foot sits on a 45-degree angle. You can take your hands onto the floor, or you can come drop down a little bit more. This knee opens out, so you really want this knee to open out. I often go down onto the outer edge, what I call the knife edge of the foot, and then the back leg, if you want to try it, goes straight. So you're right, you fell out of your lizard. Not lounge, we call it lounge lizard. So if you feel like you're struggling in terms of the upper body, I just bring something in that can support me, blocks or bolster. Then I don't strain the shoulders too much. Now the more you have a straight leg out the back, so the straight of this back left leg, the more you're stretching that hip flexor. And we're obviously also opening out this right knee, this right hip. Drop the back left knee down to the floor. Walk the right leg back in. Alright. Then, this is called Hanuman, which is a hamstring stretch. You can either slide that leg out a little bit more if it needs to. It will be a straight leg, toes will pull back. Some people might even have their hands on the blocks for this one. Yep, for sure. So chest to thigh, a little bit stronger on this one. Slide the heel in and then release the leg out the back. We'll find another down dog so that we can just transition to the other side. It'll be the left leg that does that little lounge lizard number. So lift it, bring it in, step it through, walk it off. Either prop up underneath those elbows or drop down onto the forearms. Open the left leg out to the side, so open the knee out in a way easier version. Find softness by coming and bringing that right knee down onto the floor or onto a prop. But again, remember, the straighter the back leg, if you've got it, can be a deeper hip flexor stretch. Dropping the knee when you're ready down to the floor, propping on up, walking or that left leg back in, taking it as a straight leg. Chest towards the thigh. Slide the leg in, keep bringing it in if you can. Just know that you're going to find a down dog pose. So whatever way you need to find down dog, whatever way is comfortable for you. Come up onto the balls of the feet, coming onto that down dog, drop the right heel only down, and then you'll do it again. You'll go tiptoes, and we'll drop the left heel down. With the balls of the feet right here. Balls of the feet left here. Let
let both heels equally weight down towards the floor. Let the left leg rise behind. Bring the knee to the chest, step forward. Good. And then we're going to walk our hands around to the long right edge of our mat. Toes, I would suggest point forward in this one. Use your blocks in anywhere that you need to. So if you need your hands to be on your blocks. So we're thinking straight legs here. And because we're thinking hamstrings, we're going to anchor the heels down towards the floor, but send the back thighs up towards the ceiling. Your head is heavy and it dangles between your arms. In other words, you're looking straight through your legs, not at your hands. So this gives you some nice release through the neck. Take the two hands, walk them around towards your right foot. You don't have to grab it or hold it if you can't, but if you can, you might hold onto the ankle to draw your chest closer to the right thigh. Release and walk the hands back to the center. Turn the hands to point behind you so that your fingers are pointing now to the left edge of your mat. Walk the hands like you're trying to tuck yourself underneath your legs away from, so your hands might even find the floor underneath you. Tuck yourself underneath the legs. Use your hands to pull yourself under. Walk the hands back around to the front of your mat. And then we're going to the left. Walk, walk, walk. Same deal. If we can get to the leg, we might. If we can't, that's okay. We won't. We'll draw our chest closer towards the thigh either way. Turn that left foot back around to face the mat. Should bring you back to the front part of your mat. Hands to floor. Walk the legs back to down facing dog. As we come up onto the balls of the feet, the tippy toes, spin the toes to point to the long left edge of your mat and then plant your feet down to the floor. Keep pressing the mat away from you. So watch that you don't end up looking like you're in a plank pose. Keep sending the sit bones high up into the air. Spin, toes point to the long right edge of your mat. Do the same again for me. Send your hips up towards the ceiling. Spin, plant them back to where they normally would go. Take the left leg to lead behind. Bring the left knee to the chest, step forward to where your hands are. Walk the left foot across towards the right edge of your mat. And you should find yourself into a pigeon pose here. Lay that left leg down towards the floor. Bring the right hip down to the floor. So now we're opening up that left hip. If it's too strong, having the foot out, like near the edge of the right edge of your mat, that's okay. Let it slip down near your thigh a little bit more. Okay. If you've opened up the hip too much, close it down. Keep putting the right hip bone down to your mat. That'll give you a little bit of stretch through that hip flexor. So this is quite nice. Again, it's a dual stretch. Left glute, left bottom, right front of thigh, right hip flexor. So if you can get towards the floor, even if you don't have your head and your forehead onto the floor, maybe start to walk your trunk around towards this front left leg and get sort of more twisted here, so that your upper body twists a little towards the left, maybe. Good. Come back to center. Hands to mat. Tuck right leg under. Walk legs into down dog. flush a little bit of blood back into those glutes. And then we'll do the right leg when you're ready. Step it through, lift it, send it through. Walk it across. And lower it down. So again, in this one, you could even do this as a half one. So for example, you know what, this is way too strong. You could just sit on your bottom, on your right side. So you could have your right shin parallel to the front of the mat. You could have your left thigh, left thigh parallel to the mat, and do it as like a little half, what I call a half pigeon. Just means your legs not out the back. Just take a moment to breathe nice and slowly through. Walk around towards his right leg. Bring that chest around towards the thigh more. Walk back to centre. And then if you're not in this half pigeon, just roll over onto that right bottom cheek, and it should just allow you to swing the left leg all the way around with your back onto your mat, with your bottoms back onto your mat. Take a moment to ease your way slowly back down to the floor as we prepare for Shavasana, so our last little bit of class here. Find yourself back into the rhythm of your breath here. Nice, slow, rhythmical breath where each breath is exactly the same length. As we let the breath, soothe the body. Notice perhaps on the outward breath, the body softening, relaxing. Muscles release. Tension dissolves. And we relinquish any tension.
time find a side that feels most comfortable for you to roll over and to rest on. As you continue to bring your lamp into sitting, the palms of the hands will meet us at the heart point. It's here that we get to show our gratitude for the practice and our gratitude for ourselves for giving ourselves the time to practice. And we finish together with Namaste. Namaste. Thank you, everyone. I thought I'd draw you a little card today. Would you like one? Okay. I haven't done this on my Thursday class. I have to do it on my Friday class. Right, so the card for today. Oh, this is so funny. The card for today, I'm magical, is called Achievement. Chase your dreams. You may be surprised by where they lead you. So just before, so I shuffle those cards? Yeah?
What's that?
Did I shuffle those cards?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
you did.
So just before we started, before just the pranayama, then I shuffle those cards. I drew a card for myself. Achievement.
Oh, wow.
I shuffled the deck again, and I did shuffle it, didn't I?
Yes.
And I had no idea where that card was. And I just opened up and we just got it again.
Ah,
Chase your dreams, girls.
There you go.
Whatever they might be.
let's go running.
Start